Harry, this case involving Planned Parenthood and Sandra Merritt and David DeLayden is absolutely unprecedented in American history, where journalists get prosecuted or sued for engaging in First Amendment undercover activity. And one of the things I think that really illustrates the fact that we're living in two parallel universes, and we have a choice which universe in which we want to live and how we want America to be in the future, is the closing argument of the Planned Parenthood attorney, where that attorney gets up and actually demonizes Sandra Merritt, a 66-year-old grandmother who is exposing the evil of harvesting baby body parts. And she is depicted as evil by Planned Parenthood. And in contrast, they hold up their poster children, if you will. One doctor who wants to get higher prices for baby body parts so she can drive a Lamborghini. And the other doctor, Nucatola, who casually over lunch talks about taking a baby by the feet, pulling it out breech, causing the dilation, crushing above, crushing below the thorax, extracting baby body parts for sale of these organs, and then extracting the intact brain, and then concludes, we've been pretty good at that. And those are the poster people of Planned Parenthood, those that ought to be emulated. And these are the people that they're holding up as an example, and yet they're demonizing Sandra Merritt. This is really a parallel universe. It is good and evil. It is calling evil good, and it is light and darkness. Frankly, it's life and death.
That's right, Matt. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil. And never in the decades that I've been practicing have I ever seen a more clear example of that taking place in a courtroom. It was really, it just shook me to the core to hear Planned Parenthood's attorney tell the jury that Sandra Merritt was evil because she brought the truth to life and to light. All the same time, he's representing clients that are caught on tape in living color, saying and agreeing to do the most atrocious things to little innocent human beings, and asking the jury to award punitive damages against the people that exposed Planned Parenthood. It boggles the mind. And when you think about it, this whole trial is an example of evil being called good. I mean, we should have been in San Francisco for 8 or 9 or 10 weeks prosecuting Planned Parenthood, because that's what happens invariably. Every single time when a journalist goes undercover and brings to light actual criminal conduct and behavior, the law goes after the people that have been exposed. Never in the history of California or of the United States has the law ever gone up against the journalists, the truth tellers, the people that bring out these evil deeds to light. And so, but we weren't in San Francisco to put Planned Parenthood on trial. We were in San Francisco because that's where Planned Parenthood chose strategically to bring its lawsuit against Sandra Merritt and her colleagues. And that's where Planned Parenthood chose to persuade the California Attorney General, after funding his re-election campaign with thousands and thousands of dollars. Now they've gotten the Attorney General to bring criminal charges against the truth tellers. This is unprecedented, and it just shocks the conscience.
You know, on the one hand, these videos have had a huge impact because they've awoken the American people, frankly, around the world, of the brutality of what's happening in these abortion clinics. It's not just abortion, it's not just women's rights, it's not that at all, but it's actually harvesting these baby body parts for profit, and in fact taking these organs, including hearts, while they're still beating, while these babies are still alive. Yeah. And as a result of these videos, a number of states have defunded Planned Parenthood. The House and the Senate have investigated. They've referred Planned Parenthood for criminal prosecution and investigation by the Department of Justice, which hasn't done anything yet. And some of these organ procurement companies have been sued by prosecutors in California for violating state and federal law, and some of those are out of business. They've had to pay huge fines. Some were able to weather those fines. The next one would have been Planned Parenthood. And what happened is, in California, the California Attorney General, beginning with Kamala Harris, now Senator Harris, ultimately concocted this to intimidate Sandra and David into silence, and anyone else that would dare expose Planned Parenthood. And then Planned Parenthood, the billion-dollar-plus organization a year, came after Sandra and David to silence them. And so they chose the venue in San Francisco to do this. And instead of them being on the stand and being the defendant, we're defending an innocent individual who simply exposed the truth.
That's right. And you know, they chose San Francisco because San Francisco is, I think, literally the only place in the country where this ridiculous concocted claim could see the light of day in a court of law. I mean, the crux of the charges against Sandra and her colleagues is that they recorded supposedly confidential communications without the consent of the person recorded. But we have a statute in California that defines a confidential communication as one that cannot be reasonably expected to be overheard by others. So that's the definition, can't reasonably be expected to be overheard. And we have all these videos that were recorded purposefully in very public restaurants and conference rooms where there are literally dozens of strangers to the conversations walking by right next to the conversation. You have conversations taking place in elevators with complete and total strangers sharing the same elevator ride. A ridiculous notion to say that those conversations could not have been reasonably expected to be overheard by others. In fact, in court, we have solicited testimony under oath, unrebutted, that every party to that communication agreed that they could be overheard by others. And so nowhere else in the country would this ridiculously concocted claim have survived or even seen the light of day. But in San Francisco, things are different.
Well, in fact, that's why the Los Angeles Times editorial board came out and blasted the Attorney General when he filed these 15 criminal felony charges, because it's unprecedented. Never in the history of California has this ever happened, and they understand how that chills First Amendment journalism. Because if it happens here, it could happen someplace else. Never before in the history of California, for good reasons why it hasn't happened, but it's because Planned Parenthood is involved that they want to use the Attorney General's office as a political weapon to silence Sandra and David and anyone else that dares to expose the evil of Planned Parenthood.
That's right. They have weaponized the law, and they've taken the statute that was meant to protect, intimate conversations between two people, perhaps in the privacy of their own home, and they have just made a mockery out of that and used it to go after Sandra and David and their colleagues for telling the truth. And the honest journalists here, even though they may not agree with us on the abortion issue, will see that this case really is an affront, an attack on the First Amendment and on undercover journalism, because we have a rich tradition and history in this country of undercover journalism. That's how crimes are exposed. Criminals don't like to be caught on camera. And criminals, when they know there's a camera on and somebody recording them, will usually not commit their crimes. So you have to be able to go undercover to expose conduct. And it happens all the time. It used to happen all the time. But there is no way that you can punish Sandra and David and their colleagues for what they've done in this case without shutting down essentially the whole history and tradition of undercover journalism. There is no difference between what they've done to expose Planned Parenthood and what others have done to expose other criminals. There is a difference, actually, and that difference is that the party exposed here is
Planned Parenthood.
Planned Parenthood, the biggest abortion provider in the world, which has political connections everywhere, including California.
And before the very first video, Sandra and David did a lot of research for several years, and they not only understood that Planned Parenthood and the organ procurement companies were engaging in illegal activity, which is another exception. If you believe that the person being recorded is engaging in illegal activity or about to, you can record even though it's not confidential. And they also knew the other law that says that if it were in a public place where somebody could overhear it, that's an exception as well. So they always made sure that they did the recordings in very public places. In the civil case, the judge that was essentially in the pocket of Planned Parenthood for many, many years, we tried to get him recused, wouldn't allow that information to come before the jury. The case was about the videos and wanted to prohibit all the videos from coming to the jury's attention. And yet it's about the videos that's the core of the case, because he wanted to protect Planned Parenthood and didn't want the jurors to be able to see that information. In the criminal case, we were able to show in the preliminary hearing the videos, and when we go back to the criminal court, Planned Parenthood thinks, and the Attorney General thinks, that Sandra and David are on trial. And really, we'll be able to show those videos, and Planned Parenthood will be on trial, because we will continue to expose the brutality of harvesting baby body parts. In fact, what we have in the evidence is a PhD stem cell expert who one day was doing research on mice, and in her lab comes in a beating heart of a baby that had been aborted, and she was shocked by that. She didn't do research on human organs, she did them on mice, and she said that you couldn't even cause unnecessary pain to mice. She was shocked when she saw that, because she testified that the only way that that heart could still be beating is if it were extracted while it was beating, meaning that the baby was alive when they cut out the heart, and as soon as it was taken from the baby, they had to put it on a machine to keep it beating until it got to the lab. And that's the kind of thing that Planned Parenthood doesn't want the people to see. And they don't want...
She testified in the civil case. She was not allowed.
She wasn't allowed to testify in the civil case. The judge prohibited it. But in the criminal case, we're going to present that. We did in the preliminary hearing, even though the Attorney General tried to stop it, because he tried to intimidate that PhD stem cell expert and say, if you're going to testify, we're going to indict you. And fortunately, she decided she was going to speak the truth.
Yeah, it was the clearest case of witness tampering and witness intimidation that I had ever witnessed. And for it to come from the Attorney General of California, the top law enforcement officer of the state of California, knows that a witness is about to demolish his concocted case, and goes to that witness and says, if you take the stand, and if you testify in the way that you're going to testify, we're going to bring charges against you as an unindicted co-conspirators of Sandra and David. That is outrageous.
It's unbelievable.
That should have led to them being disbarred right there on the spot, and yet they can get away with it in California.
You know, here's what we have. We have Planned Parenthood in the abortion facilities. They're making money off of the abortions, but they're also making money off of selling baby body parts. There's the organ procurement companies that are making huge profits off these baby body parts, and they're intersecting with research facilities like universities, that some of which are getting federal funding. And so these universities go to the website of some of these organ procurement companies, and there was a website that actually had some drop-down screens, just like you would order shoes or clothes. You could choose the size, the color, you could choose the gestation, the size, and you could order specific body parts and then get a price list, some of which were $17,000, thousands of dollars. And then that order form would go from the organ procurement company to the abortion facility that day. And as these women are coming in, they would look at the order form, try to fulfill that order by looking at who they want to take these body parts from. And while the woman is still recovering from the anesthesia, the baby body parts are being sped off to the research facility for huge amounts of profit. And so the researchers don't want chemicals in the baby, because they don't want that to interfere with the research. So these children are being aborted, some of which are alive with no anesthesia. They're not being killed with a chemical or a poison. They are alive, and those hearts are being extracted while the baby is still alive. The chest are being opened while the baby is still alive. The face is being cut while they're extracting the intact brain, the kidneys, the liver. All of those baby body parts are then whisked away for research. And this is what Planned Parenthood and the Attorney General in California do not want you to know. And that's why they've come after Sandra Merritt and David Delayden.
That's right. Planned Parenthood would have much rather continue to do these things and do them in dark, in secret. And the fact that Sandra was able to shine such a bright light on this atrocious injustice that's been taking place to with these human beings, that's what's really hurt them, and what's affected them, and that's why they're coming so viciously after Sandra, and they're looking to not just bankrupt her, but to actually put her in jail.
Yeah.
I mean, at the start of this political prosecution, we had the bail hearing, and the Attorney General's assistant tells the court that there should be no bail, or bail should be really, really high in this case, because they're looking to put Sandra in jail for 11 years. They want to jail a 66-year-old grandmother for 11 years. Why? Because she brought the truth to light. It boggles the mind. It's atrocious.
You know, Jesus said that people like darkness rather than light.
That's right.
And Jesus brought light into the world. And when you bring this to light, like what Sandra and David have done, they want to continue in darkness. They don't want you to know about it. And that's why they've come after Sandra and David. But we're still representing Sandra. We have an amazing situation here, because Sandra should be the one that is going after Planned Parenthood in court rather than her being a defendant. But nevertheless, Sandra is strong because God prepared her for this moment. And God's preparing other people to do other things that they're called to. Like God prepared Sandra for this moment through different experiences in her life, to literally just speak truth. This is what this is about, to speak truth and to reveal to the world this Nazi type of inhumane barbarism that's being perpetrated every single day in America behind these clinic doors called Planned Parenthood. That's really what this is about. And so for those who are following this or watching this, you can pray that truth is revealed. Pray for our cases as we're continuing on the civil case, continuing on the criminal case. Pray that we ultimately have victory in the courtrooms and on the courts of appeal, and even if necessary, I believe, at the United States Supreme Court, because this case, particularly the civil case, raises significant constitutional issues that would go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court.
That's right, Matt. I mean, the encouragement we take is from the promise we find in God's Word, which tells us that the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome the light. We have the light on our side. We have the truth on our side. And so it's not easy to go into a San Francisco courtroom, to show up day after day for 10 straight weeks between the criminal and the civil case, and to speak truth and to show light to people who abhor both of those. It's not easy. But that's what God has called us to do, and we're just so privileged to be able to be on the front lines in this fight. This may be, you know, the longest running and the most expensive case in Liberty Counsel history, but this is a fight worth having.
This is life and death. I mean,
yes,
literally. You know, it's not a saying. This is literally life and death.
That's right.
If I were to describe to you what has come out in the evidence and not tell you the age of the people.
Here's an important question.
This is life and death. And if I were to describe to you what has come out in these videos that is happening every day to these precious children, you would think that I'm talking about Nazi Germany. Yeah. And I'm talking about the United States of America. I'm talking about Planned Parenthood. I'm talking about this is happening in your communities. Yeah. And so you need to get involved in prayer, but also in action as well. You can go to Liberty Counsel's website, lc.org, and the special website for this case is lc.org/Sandra, lc.org/Sandra.
That was good.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think, does you
It's passionate.
think anything else to?
No, I think we covered it.
Really long.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we can just take little
Yeah,
clips.
Yeah, we don't have to put it all in one video. Maybe,
No.
maybe make a
No,
couple.
you can do a couple
Yeah.
Your
videos, yeah.
passion comes through. That's really good.
You think it's